is really mostly about philosophy, something that really interests me, and specifically something called fallacies. The reason I want to talk about fallacies is because, unlike most other philosophy, this is some very interesting stuff, and is a lot more applicable to the real world than debating whether or not there is a God or whether or not we exist, or some of those more abstract concepts. Fallacies are very interesting. They're very complicated, but some of them are simple. And the reason they're very interesting is because there are so many examples of them. And as far as college classes go, very, very few college classes that I've taken stuck with me, like my methods of reasoning class that taught me about fallacies. And I believe the reason why is because it was really surprising to me, really eye-opening to learn how often myself and people in general use fallacies to prove an argument, and both that person and the person who's listening thinks it is right or makes sense. So it was really surprising to see how often people understand these mistakes to be true. You got to excuse me, I haven't explained what a fallacy is yet. Really, a fallacy is just a mistake in reasoning. It's using some sort of support for an argument which is actually not logically correct. Okay? Um, One example is, say, I'll give you a quick example. Um, they say it's called an appeal to emotion, and that would be saying something is wrong or something is right because it makes me feel bad or it makes me feel good. And the really interesting thing about fallacies is that although there may be some really strong, good arguments that only use emotion as its support, it is still logically not sound. Logically, you have to have actual evidence, real specific support, not just that's how it made me feel. Okay? So, like I was saying, that's one really interesting thing about fallacies is that although they are, logically incorrect, it really brings into focus the difference between logic right and moral right. I talked a little bit about it in some of our discussions about like the Jesus principle that yeah, Jesus, we're not all Jesus. He turns the other cheek. He does everything right. This is the real world. We aren't Jesus, and if we acted like Jesus in the business world, we'd probably drown in the river and go under, as they say. So, like I said, it really brings into focus the difference between what is logically right and what is the best idea to go with at the time. So let's see what else I have here. Like I was saying, fallacies are, it just brings into light all the different little complexities of making a strong argument. And once you really take a close look at our arguments, you'll see that you really need clarification to be exact. And to prove something actually true, you have to be exact. That is only if you're proving it to someone like me, who wants to understand the logical aspect. But that's the thing that I was talking about fallacies, is that once you take a look at what people accept as truths, or the different things that people will let sway them or choose to sway them, then you realize, okay, not everyone accepts, logical things, or some people will let weird, strange things sway their opinion. So yeah, it's just really interesting to take a look at exactly what goes into our decisions. There's two things about fallacies. Before I get into them more specifically, we got to be careful not to write them off because they can seem really complicated at times and they can seem contradictory. Because depending on the example or depending on the way you use it, it will be um, not it wouldn't be acceptable to use them in certain situations. So then you'll think like, well, I thought these were rules. I thought that was a rule, and it is a rule. But if you apply it in the wrong way, then it can make something that is right wrong. For example, I'll touch more on this later, but appeal to tradition. That is saying something is right just because that's the way people have been doing it for a while. Now that can be confusing because there actually is a lot of verifiably logical merit in taking hints from people in the past who have done the same thing you are doing. So it's just a matter of how you phrase it. If you were to phrase it correctly, which would be, I think we should do it this way because these people had very similar circumstances and they got a favorable outcome by doing this. So I'm being specific. But if you say just because that's the way it's been being done, then that is not logically sound. That is not an actual support. It's not real support. So that would be a fallacy. So it can be confusing. And the second thing that let's see, there isn't a second thing. So like I was saying, fallacies are common arguments that are actually logical mistakes. They happen all the time, and they can also be extremely persuasive. Like I was saying, appeal to emotion. There's these different examples, many different examples. They can be very, very persuasive, but they are not logically sound. They actually don't support the argument, even though it seems like they do. And it's just interesting because with this logic, I don't know if anyone's ever taken a proof course or if you took, I remember in 8th grade math, maybe ninth grade, we had a little section on logic where we had to do P's and Q's and if P and not Q. Excuse me. And also that methods of reasoning class I took in college was a lot of um, math. It's really mathematical representation of different facts and opinions and you know what logic seems to do in that sense, the mathematical logic. We seem to be able to objectify right and wrong. So instead of having it be subjective, like just whatever anyone thinks, we seem to be able to verify. All right, just this little piece is true, and if we can accept that just this little piece is completely true and sound, then we can build off that. And if we add it with another one, there's places we can go where the outcome we can mathematically show, which is undeniable that it's correct. We can mathematically show that this is either right or wrong. But that's one thing that I want to talk about a little bit with you guys is that it's when you look at a lot of these fallacies, it brings into focus the difference between logical right and moral right. Just like I was saying with the Jesus thing, although it may be right to never hit someone back, sometimes it's the correct decision to make to defend yourself. So it's very interesting. So let's look at this picture now. Like I was saying about logic being confusing. We got a chalkboard and a little hand, and it's got 2 equals a number written out, a number, and then it says 1 equals a number. So in logic, that's how these little equations are shown to you. It's like John likes cats. Cats are allergic to dogs. Therefore, John likes things that are allergic to dogs. So you have these 2 premises, 2 equals a number, 1 equals a number. Therefore, in this example, it's saying 2 equals 1, because that's how it is in logic. The first premise is true. 2 is a number. Okay? The second premise is also true. 1 is a number. And since they both are equal to the same thing, that means they're also logically equal to each other. But we know that 2 is not equal to 1. So it's just showing you guys that it can get confusing, depending on what topic you're addressing, what line, you're crossing. It just can get really confusing. You need to keep it separated from logic and math, and also morality.